All right, Alexander, let's talk about the rejection of Călin Georgescu's candidacy for president of Romania. The elections, the doing over of the elections is going to take place, I believe, on the first round is on May 4th or 5th. I'm not sure of the day, but that's when the redoing of the annulled, canceled elections that were supposed to have already happened, which was projecting Georgescu to win.
Oh.
That's what's happening in Romania, and he went to submit his application. The first time around, he got arrested. He finally got his candidacy in, and it has been rejected by the Election Bureau of Romania. He has 24 hours to appeal, but I would guess that the appeal is also going to be rejected. And all of this is most likely coming from the European Union, because they are doing everything that they feel they have to do in order to prevent Georgescu from winning the presidency, because he is on track, if you go by the latest polling figures, to win. And the EU will not allow Georgescu to win. So you have protests in Romania. I imagine when they reject his appeal, you will have continued protests.
Yeah.
And you have a situation in Romania where 2 elections have effectively been canceled. Or maybe you could say that you've had 2 coups d'etats in a way. The first one in the first election, and now a second one for the second election. All of this originating with Russian meddling on TikTok, the dumbest of dumb narratives. But here we are. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, notice how the explanations for the exclusion of Georgescu are shifting. So there was never any problem when he stood previously in the elections before, the elections where he won the first round. There was never any question then that, he should be prevented from standing because he had extremist and dangerous views or anything of that kind. It was fine that he could stand then. Nobody took him seriously. Nobody suspected that, his views were any kind of problem. And then, of course, he won the first round. And shock, horror, he won the first round. So you come out and you say, well, the reason he won the first round is because the Russians were backing him and that there was this sinister campaign on TikTok, which enabled him to win. That is in itself, by the way, and to repeat once more, not a reason to cancel a whole election, to annul a whole election, and to stop someone going forward to the second round. That in itself, even if it had been true, it would not have been a reason to do that. As we've discussed in previous programs, if that had been true, then what you do in the second round is you say you can't trust Georgescu. He's actually backed by the Russians. They ran a TikTok campaign on his behalf. That's how you deal with this in a properly run, honest, good faith process. But no, they came up with that explanation. To repeat again, nothing to do with extremist views or anything of that kind. That whole narrative of the Russian influence of the TikTok campaign, that all collapsed. There was never any proof for it. The TikTok campaign was run by an other Romanian political party, not by the Russians at all. So they couldn't sustain that one. So they still don't want Georgescu to win. So firstly, a couple of days ago, we had first of all, when he tries to stand again, he's arrested. He's interrogated for, 6.5 hours. He comes out facing all kinds of nebulous charges, which we discussed in our previous program, some of which don't seem to me to be actual crimes anyway. Well, that isn't enough to knock him out. So then you try to revive the whole Russian narrative again. You arrest a 101-year-old general who's got rather zany views, apparently, on all kinds of things. You pretend that he's launching a coup. You say that the Russians are behind it. No evidence Georgescu is involved with this person. I gather they don't even know each other. So that doesn't work. And so now you come up with another explanation that he's got these extremist views. I mean, it just changes all the time. But the basic point is they don't want Georgescu to stand. They don't want the person, the candidate who every opinion poll shows a plurality of Romanians want to vote for, the person who actually won the first round of the election when it was held constitutionally last year. They don't want him to stand and to be elected president of Romania. I mean, it is absolutely terrible. It is disastrous. It is the most outrageous thing I've seen. It is absolutely what you correctly say. It is a coup. It's a coup by another name. It may be a coup carried out by the legal authorities, but it is a repudiation of democracy. And Romania is supposed to be a democratic state.
Well, the illusion of democracy, carried out by the authorities allegedly under pressure by the Commission, by the European Union, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You know, what does this say about the European Union? Because, you know, it's shocking what's happening in Romania, but it's not surprising if you've been following the evolution of the European Union, and if you've been following the way Ursula has been running the European Union over the past 5-6 years.
No.
This is the trajectory of things, not only for Romania, but for every country in Europe. I mean, you have Orban, he slipped through the cracks. But to be fair to Orban, he's been established for more than 15, 20 years. But you have someone like Fico, you could say slipped through the cracks. Maybe you could say Meloni at the time slipped through the cracks, but with Fico, they cannot rein Fico in.
No.
Meloni, they reined her in, they got her in line. What does this say about the European Union and how it operates? I mean, we've said in past videos, you use the word administrators. You don't really have presidents or prime ministers in Europe. You have administrators.
No.
I mean, that's the future of things, it seems.
Absolutely. Now, you know, I think one thing I would say about Fico, obviously he slipped through the cracks, you know, I'm not.
Also established. Fico is also an established politician.
He's an established politician
like
who's
Orban,
got a long history in Slovak politics. But remember, he was elected prime minister. There's been a massive media campaign and propaganda campaign against him. That created conditions in which there was a serious attempt made to assassinate him. I mean, you know, people always talk about the violence that the, you know, populists are supposed to be behind. Never any proof of this, but actual violence against Fico, you know, a so-called populist leader, that apparently is fine. And, you know, I even remember reading after the assassination attempt, lots of articles in all sorts of places about how, you know, it was the attack on Fico was dangerous because it would open the way for Fico's people to engage in violent coercion against their opponents. No evidence anyway, by the way, of any of that. Nobody, as far as I know, nothing of that kind has happened. There was attempts also to organize, well, to say it straightforwardly, color revolutions in Slovakia, big protest crowds, no confidence votes in the Slovak parliament, all that kind of thing. So you see the pressure that Fico, who got through the cracks, has to face. We now have something far, far worse happening in Romania, where, as I said, the authorities in Romania are now being put under this enormous pressure to take this action against the most popular politician in Romania, because that's what he is. It's important to remember, Fico is today the single most popular political leader in Romania.
Georgescu,
sorry. Yeah. Georgescu is the most popular political leader at the moment in Romania. So what this tells you is that the EU centre Well, they've never been particularly keen on democracy at all. But they're now reached the point where they're basically prepared to engineer coups and to interfere directly inside member states in order to get the apparatus, the apparatchiks appointed that they want to have in place. And that's what we see. We see this right across the European Union today.
Why is Romania so important to them? Is it only Project Ukraine, or is this about Russia as well? Is this something more? And to wrap up the video, what is democracy to the European Union? Because I think a problem that we have here, as someone that lives in the EU, I think, and a lot of people in Romania as well, I think they have a different definition of democracy than what Ursula and Kaja Kallas consider to be democracy. I mean, they have their democracy, and I think the people have a different perception of what democracy means. We have the right understanding, but they see it differently. And I don't know, I just want your thoughts on those two things to wrap up the video.
Well, firstly, the reason Romania is so important is mostly because of Romania's key role in Project Ukraine. And of course, it's also geographically important because it is on the Black Sea. And the European Union is very, very keen, as we know, to establish itself in the Black Sea area and all of that. And if Romania, switches sides, then I mean that might affect the European Union's position in the Black Sea. Georgia is already slipping away as they see it. In Bulgaria, there's growing opposition as well. So there's all that. But Romania, there is something else, which is that it's big. It's 20 million people. It's the biggest country in the Balkans. It's Bucharest is a thriving and important city. It's potentially got big industries. So, and it's got a population that is very patriotic, very, very proud, that stands for Romania's history, believes in Romania's history and all of that. So in some ways, it's difficult to assimilate. So for that reason, you have to break it down. This is very much the sort of instinctive reaction of the European Union, precisely because Romania has, from their point of view, the possibility of being a bit difficult, a bit difficult to run. You have to control it even more tightly. You can't afford to cut them any kind of slack. It's too big. It's potentially too rich, because Romania could in time become a rich country. It's too geographically important to be let go of easily. So that's I think, why Romania is important, more even than the fact, as I said, that it is so deeply enmeshed in Project Ukraine. Now, what about the European Union and its conception of democracy? I'm going to say bluntly, I think it is a totalitarian conception of democracy. Democracy is what we believe. Democracy is a political system where people who we consider to be the right people are in control. Any people who are opposed to us are by definition anti-democratic, and they must be excluded from the democratic process. Because if they are involved in the democratic process, then they will undermine it. They will undermine our control. And that means that they will undermine democracy itself. Now, that is not what you and I mean by democracy. It's not a pluralist conception of democracy. It's not a situation where the people exercise power. Because, of course, as Greeks, we know that that is what democracy means. Democracy is the power of the people. It is the system where the people have control. Kratos is the state, its power. Demos is the people. That is not the European Union's conception of democracy. Democracy is the situation where they and people who share their views and agree with them and are like them, those people have control. It's a very, as I said, totalitarian conception of democracy. And it is identical to the one that the Soviets had, except that the Soviets were absolutely straightforward about it. The Soviet Union also claimed to be a democracy. The communists in Eastern Europe claimed that they were democrats. East Germany was the German Democratic Republic. That was its name. But of course, the conception of democracy that they had is that, of course, everybody agreed with the great cause of building socialism and ultimately communism. Anybody who was opposed to that cause was a counter-revolutionary and an anti-democrat, and they had to be excluded from the process, and they had to be, if not excluded, well, even more radical action needed to be taken against them. So it's not that different fundamentally. Of course, the European Union hasn't yet reached the point that the Soviets, who are much more straightforward about what they were, by the way, it hasn't reached that point yet, but it is heading steadily in that direction.
Different economic systems.
It's different. Oh, yeah, very different economic systems.
Not that the European Union economic system is doing very well, to be honest, as we've covered. Yeah, but
well, it is completely dysfunctional. I'm going to say something. I mean, I'm going to be absolutely blunt about it. If you look at the 30 years of that the European Union has had since it became a union, since the single market was established, and especially since the Lisbon Treaty, we've had economic stagnation. Whereas the Soviet Union did have long periods of economic growth and dynamism. Looking at, the whole picture overall, you could even argue that the Soviets were in some ways economically more successful. I mean, they did take a peasant society and industrialize it and educate it. What has the European Union achieved in that time? They haven't set up a single successful social media platform. They're presiding over deindustrialization and a stagnation in income and wages and a gradual dumbing down of culture. I mean, they have been less successful than the Soviets were economically and in some respects, culturally speaking. Just saying, that's not a defense, by the way, of the Soviet system. It is just pointing at how utterly sterile and unsuccessful this European system that we are living under has actually been. And the point is, it is becoming more authoritarian every day. And its philosophy is becoming an increasingly totalitarian one. Either you agree with us, in which case you're a Democrat, and you can't participate in our wonderful democracy, in which everybody agrees with everyone else, or you are not, in which case you must be excluded from the democratic process, and you must be investigated and subjected to 6.5-hour interrogations and all of that. That's where we're heading.
That's where we are, yeah. And you do have a type of one-party system in the EU, which carries over to just about every member state. Yes, countries, for example, Greece, may have 3 or 4 main parties. But in essence, it is a uniparty within the member states that answers to a larger uniparty in Brussels. So, I mean, it is a type of Politburo uniparty system where they do vote for the pre-approved, pre-selected candidates. Yeah. I mean, is that a proper explanation or representation?
It is a fully proper explanation.
Because in member states, they say, well, we have center-right, we have center-left, we have Greens, we have CDUs, we have SPDs. Okay, but effectively, it is a type of uniparty.
Well, it is exactly a type of uniparty.
That is approved by the center.
It is absolutely a uniparty, and on the fundamental issues, they all agree. On the support for the EU centre, they all agree. And we see that they held an election in Germany, just was it 2 weeks ago, where, supposedly they were going to stand by the debt brake. And at the moment the election is out of the way, they reverse positions completely and they do away, or say they're going to do away with the debt brake. Now, again, to stress, in East Germany, by the way, they also had a multi-party system. There was the Socialist Unity Party, which is, of course, the Communist Party, and that exercised control. But it may surprise people to learn there was even a CDU in Germany. The CDU actually had a branch in East Germany. I mean, now, of course, they didn't have proper elections. They had one candidate elections and seats in the parliament were prearranged and parceled out with each other. But who's to say, given the trends, given what we've seen in Romania, that we won't ultimately end up with exactly the same result in the EU member states? I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow or in a year's time or in 5 years or 10 years' time, but it is not difficult to see how in time we could end up with elections that are as empty of content and as reality as the regular elections they performed in Eastern Europe in the communist era once were. I mean, it is astonishing to say all of this. I find myself astonished that I am saying all of this. If anybody had told me 20 years ago that this is where we would be, I would never have believed it. But I would never have believed that we would see the events play out in Romania that we are seeing play out today.
Yeah. All right. We will end the video there, the Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and X. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch like what we are wearing in this video update. The link is in the description box down below. Take care.